Um, God, I've always wanted to explore slavery in a film before.
When Quentin Tarantino released Reservoir Dogs in 1992, it wasn't in perfect condition, as several hurdles behind the scenes affected the movie production. Despite these setbacks, this gritty crime thriller told a story that left a lasting impact on the history of pop culture. From its raw, undiluted dialogues to its unique cast and soundtrack, the movie became a cult sensation. However, there are countless unusual behind-the-scenes weird details you probably missed. Curious what these may be? Join us as we unveil 20 weird facts you didn't know about Reservoir Dogs. Number 1. Reservoir Dogs' budget was so low that actors used their personal clothes. When Quentin Tarantino was to produce the movie, he didn't have much funding. He had less than $30,000, and making a movie with such a small budget meant it would fall below the standard. Tarantino relied on his connections and resourcefulness to bring the movie to life. He planned to utilize his friends and cast himself in the project. All these made it feel easy to make the movie, as he knew he didn't have to pay his close friends much. Since the budget was low, the script was also written with this in mind, featuring no complicated locations, outfits, or characters. The low budget also made it hard for Tarantino to get a wardrobe department. Instead, Tarantino asked his friends to bring their clothing as wardrobe. This was weird, having the cast use their everyday clothes to shoot a film. One of the most notable pieces of clothing that made this easily identifiable was Chris Penn's track jacket. He had worn the outfit several times before, and many knew him for this cloth. However, the movie was eventually shot on a tight budget of $1.3 million, which could barely cover much. The signature black suits worn by the cast were provided for free by a designer who loved the American crime film genre, and in a bid to support Tarantino, she gave them to the cast. However, the pieces she gave weren't enough, and some cast members had to improvise. Steve Buscemi wore his black jeans in place of suit pants, and Michael Madsen wore a jacket and pants that came from two different suits. However, despite all these factors, the movie ultimately proved to be a hit. Number 2. Quentin Tarantino got so many weird offers in the search for producers. Knowing he didn't have enough money to shoot the movie, Tarantino searched for producers to support him in making the film, as he still needed funds to acquire some items to bring the movie up to a certain standard. He wanted to get better cameras to make the film look sharper. He also wanted to upgrade the lighting. In the search for producers to finance the film, Tarantino and Bender received offers from producers that came with an unusual catch. One of the producers offered them $1.6 million, but disliked the ending of the script. He asked that they change the ending so that everyone who had died came back to life, the whole thing having been a hoax or a con of some kind. They turned this down as this wasn't what Tarantino wanted. Another producer offered $500,000, but only if his girlfriend could play Mr. Blonde. This was a strange idea. Tarantino and Bender left the office, but later found themselves thinking about it and even wanted to accept it. However, in the end, they turned it down and decided to work with the $30,000 they had, which was all they had, with their friends. However, things changed when Harvey Keitel got a copy of the script. He liked what he read and said he would help produce it. He also asked to be a part of the cast, and Tarantino agreed. Keitel played the role of Mr. White. Harvey Keitel supported the film with a budget of $1.3 million, and this made the Reservoir Dogs a reality. Number 3. Reservoir Dogs was majorly filmed in a mortuary. Most of the scenes of Reservoir Dogs were shot in a big, empty warehouse because they couldn't afford much in the way of set rental. However, what's weird is that the empty building where our multicolored heroes rendezvous after the robbery was a disused mortuary located in Los Angeles. It was decorated to look like a warehouse. Still, they weren't able to hide everything, as the warehouse was filled with caskets, funeral equipment, embalming fluid, and a hearse, which can be seen when Harvey Keitel and Steve Buscemi go to the back room to argue. Additionally, the crate on which Mr. Blonde sits is an abandoned old hearse used to carry a coffin. But could Tarantino have planned the coffin and the hearse as a cover to make the group escape without being seen? Many viewers believe that no one would have suspected that a funeral procession was carrying thousands of dollars worth of diamonds and more. While no one knows why the set designers chose to keep the coffin in the hearse, it's weird that they were comfortable shooting the movie in the mortuary. But that's not all. The mortuary also had a second floor, which was also used in the movie as Mr. Orange's apartment. They had designed it to look like a modest, lived-in space. And notably, most of the crew, except Mr. Brown and Mr. Blue, died in the warehouse, so it may all be symbolic. However, the decision to shoot in the mortuary was due to the tight budget. Keep watching as we unveil more weird facts you missed in Reservoir Dogs. Number 4. The movie was shot within 35 days. Reservoir Dogs was Quentin Tarantino's debut feature, and most debuts can at times be a nightmare to shoot, as most first-time directors don't always know what they are doing. But for Tarantino, he seemed to know what he was doing. Even before he shot his movie, he had a broad knowledge of film and knew just what he wanted to achieve. Given the budget constraints, he knew he had to work fast, so he made sure to shoot everything within 35 days. This is because most of the scenes took place within the confines of a warehouse. It was impressive that Tarantino was able to shoot Reservoir Dogs in 35 days, but the cast had to do a little more than usual. Number 5. Tarantino wrote the script in less than a month. A script is one of the key elements that either makes or breaks a movie. When Tarantino got the idea to write Reservoir Dogs, he leaped into action and took less time than you might think to write the first draft of the script. Tarantino wrote the script in just 2.5 weeks, which was approximately 100 pages long. He loved what he wrote. The story was a non-linear narrative with intense dialogue, and the script pushed the boundaries of storytelling in the crime genre. Those who saw this first draft loved it instantly, and all wanted to be the one to direct it, as they knew the story had great potential. Among those who fought to make this happen was Tony Scott, a filmmaker and close friend of Tarantino. But Tarantino wanted to direct the script by himself. However, he gave Tony another of his screenplays, called True Romance, to direct. While many expected the script Tarantino wrote to be subpar due to its rapid delivery, the script was a masterpiece. Number 6. Quentin Tarantino has 2 different stories on how he got the movie title. Reservoir Dogs is an unusual title that has hooked many. Quentin Tarantino said he got the inspiration to name his movie Reservoir Dogs while visiting a production company. He noticed that they had a pile of unsolicited scripts labeled Reservoir Dogs. All those scripts were fighting with each other for attention, like dogs trapped in a reservoir tank. The name stuck in his mind. However, in another instance, Tarantino said in an interview that while working at the now famous video archives, he would often recommend little-known titles to customers. When he suggested the title Louis Malle's Au revoir les enfants, produced in 1987, the patron mockingly replied, "I don't want to see no Reservoir Dogs." When he later needed a title, he picked it because it was unique, but when asked what it means, Quentin never gives a straight answer. He has not given a definitive explanation of how he got the title to this day. Number 7. The low budget affected the heist scene. Although Reservoir Dogs is a crime drama movie, the scene of the heist was never shown on screen. Many found this unique, as the movie repeatedly circled the heist, but despite everyone waiting for it to happen, they never actually saw it. The Reservoir Dogs heist happened off-screen, and the audience only witnessed the lead-up and aftermath. Quentin Tarantino later revealed that the reason was initially budgetary. He knew that showing the heist was going to cost more money, as they would need the location, stunt work, and special effects. With not enough funds, he decided to remove it from the script, making the film cheaper and keeping it within budget. Tarantino also said he had always liked the idea of not showing the heist and stuck with that approach to keep the details undefined. This technique allowed viewers to focus on other aspects of the film beyond the robbery, such as the characters and their unique backstories. It was not the first time this had been done in film, as the stage play Glengarry Glen Ross and its adaptation also mention a robbery that is never shown. Tarantino said he wanted the movie to be about something that is not seen, and to play with a real-time clock as opposed to a movie clock ticking. Many agreed it was a wise choice. Number 8. Quentin Tarantino originally wrote the role of Mr. Pink for himself. When Tarantino was writing the script, he originally wrote the role of Mr. Pink for himself. This was partly because he wanted to star in the movie and partly because it would help the budget. Initially, he prevented other actors from auditioning for the part, but since he was not satisfied with the applicants, he reshuffled the cast several times. When Steve Buscemi came to audition, Tarantino told him, "You'll have to do a killer audition to wrestle this part from me." Buscemi did just that and ended up playing Mr. Pink. Michael Madsen had also auditioned for the role but was not selected for it. Since Tarantino could not play Mr. Pink, he took the role of Mr. Brown, who appeared in only 3 scenes and didn't die in the film. However, despite the change, Tarantino was eager to deliver the "like a virgin" speech from the opening scene himself. In the original script, Mr. Pink had that speech, but after the casting shift, Tarantino rewrote it as dialogue for Mr. Brown. Notably, John Cryer was offered the role of Mr. Pink, but he declined it. He admitted that he did not understand the script and would not have gotten the part. Number 9. Madonna had to correct Quentin Tarantino after the "like a virgin" scene. Like everyone, Madonna saw Reservoir Dogs, and there was one moment in particular she could not ignore. In the opening scene, Quentin Tarantino, who played the role of Mr. Brown, sits with a group of criminals dissecting the meaning of the song "Like a Virgin." His character insists the entire song is about a girl who digs a guy with a big manhood, calling it a metaphor for size and nothing more. Mr. Blonde tries to argue otherwise, but Tarantino's character refuses to budge. Just weeks after the film's release, Madonna saw the scene and later had the chance to set the record straight in person. While Tarantino was touring Europe for the film, they ended up at the same party. She handed him a copy of her 5th album, Erotica, which had been released only 2 weeks after Reservoir Dogs, and on it, she had written, "To Quentin, it's not about DK, it's about love. Madonna." In an interview, Madonna explained that the song was about how something made her feel brand new and fresh, not about sleeping with a man. Most people had missed the point, but she wanted Tarantino to know directly. Additionally, Chris Penn, playing nice guy Eddie Cabot, was Madonna's former brother-in-law. His older brother, Sean, was married to Madonna for 4 years. Number 10. The producers of Reservoir Dogs spent their entire music budget on a single song. One unusual production choice was Tarantino's decision to allocate the entire music budget to a single track, "Stuck in the Middle with You" by Stealers Wheel. He loved the song so much that they paid for the full licensing rights to use it in the movie. It plays during the infamous torture scene, where Mr. Blonde dances while tormenting the cop. The upbeat tone of the song clashed with the violence, making the moment all the more unforgettable. Tarantino was satisfied even if the budget covered only that one song. Later, they secured a deal for an official movie soundtrack, which enabled them to include other tracks, such as "Little Green Bag." Notably, all the remaining songs in the film were pre-recorded tracks played as if on a radio station, but in truth, Reservoir Dogs has no orchestral score at all. Number 11. Almost everyone hated the torture scene. Ironically, the most famous scene in the film is also the one most audiences disliked. When Reservoir Dogs premiered on the festival circuit in 1992, the scene no one could stop talking about was the torture sequence. In it, Mr. Blonde ties up a police officer, slices off his ear, and douses him in petrol. The violence was considered extreme, even though Tarantino chose not to show the moment directly. As Mr. Blonde moves in for the cut, the camera pans away to an empty corridor, leaving the audience to hear the screams. The implication alone was enough to unsettle viewers. Some critics even called Reservoir Dogs one of the 25 most dangerous films to watch. Others were frustrated by the fact that they could not see the act but had to imagine it through sound. Harvey Weinstein, then head of Miramax, also disliked the scene and urged Tarantino to remove it, fearing audiences would walk out. Tarantino refused, insisting the moment remain in the final cut. Number 12. There were several walkouts in the Reservoir Dogs movie screening. After Reservoir Dogs was produced, it was screened at various film festivals. However, to the shock of Tarantino, people began to walk out during the torture scene. Tarantino said the most significant number he counted during the walkouts was 33. It was shocking to him that 33 people walked out due to the police torture. When he screened the film at the Sitges Horror Film Festival, where they had just shown Peter Jackson's gore-soaked early film Dead Alive. He thought everyone would be able to withstand it and sit through it. But to his dismay, 5 people walked out of the audience, including Wes Craven. This was especially surprising given that Wes Craven was the director of The Last House on the Left, a film that explores the evils and horrors of violence. Yet, he walked out. Tarantino couldn't believe this. Was his movie so tough for other seasoned horror directors to watch? Well, this was weird. What was in Reservoir Dogs that other horror veterans couldn't stomach? But it wasn't only Craven. The legendary makeup and effects artist Rick Baker also left. He later explained that he found the violence unnerving because of its heightened sense of realism. However, he told Tarantino to take the walkout as a compliment. In Tarantino's mind, it wasn't supposed to be the audience's cup of tea. He deliberately wanted the ear-cutting scene to be disturbing, and he was pleased that he had achieved it. But what if the more graphic version of the ear-cutting scene, which was deleted, had made it to the screening? This version involved a tube running up to the actor's ear that squirted blood. Maybe more than 50 people or even the entire audience would have left the theater. But the weirdness doesn't end here. Number 13. Lawrence Tierney made filming difficult. Lawrence Tierney, who played mob boss Joe Cabot, was a nightmare on set. He was notorious for his hard-living ways, and his drinking frequently got him into trouble while filming. He made everything difficult for everyone by constantly getting in the way. He was either seen scuffling with Michael Madsen or repeatedly fluffing his lines and complaining about the intense heat on the warehouse set. This was so annoying and made things more complicated for the cast and crew. It was even a miracle that the film was shot in 35 days, as Tierney's behavior was a constant source of frustration. Everyone complained about it, but he was Tarantino's friend, and one of those who had agreed to do the film as a favor for him. Tarantino tried to keep things cool, but at one point, they almost exchanged blows after Tarantino was forced to step in to break up an altercation between Tierney and another cast member. Lawrence Tierney's presence on set distracted everyone and dragged the schedule. Tarantino tried to keep a cool head when dealing with him and would merely walk away when the actor's aggression hit critical mass. However, after 3 days of repeatedly acting up, Tarantino couldn't take it anymore and fired him on the 3rd day of filming. Tierney went drinking afterward and ended up firing a .357 Magnum into the walls of his Hollywood apartment later that night. He spent the weekend in jail, only to be bailed out by his agent Monday morning so that he could finish the film. Quentin and producer Lawrence Bender didn't find out about the incident until filming was almost completed. He was later rehired after things cooled down, and from then on, he behaved pretty well. Number 14. James Woods fired his agent for losing a spot in Reservoir Dogs. James Woods was one of the hottest and most respected stars in the early 90s. He had built a name for himself over the years, slowly winning several awards and earning critical acclaim. Tarantino appreciated his craft and wanted him to be part of Reservoir Dogs. He reached out to Woods through his agent and offered him 5 different cash deals. However, every one of these was rejected by the agent, who saw the money as far lower than what his client typically accepted. All of Tarantino's efforts to reach Woods personally didn't work out. The connection simply never happened. After the movie had been shot and became one of the most talked about films of the year, many began to recognize and see Quentin Tarantino as a rising force in cinema. A few years later, Tarantino and Woods ran into each other for the first time. As they got talking and appreciating each other's craft, Woods learned of the offers he had missed and was furious. James Woods' agent had never informed Wood about the Tarantino offer, but he decided to reject it on his own. Woods felt that even if the pay was low, his agent was still meant to tell him about the opportunities. Woods was so angry that he fired his agent and got a new one. However, Tarantino avoided telling Woods which role he had been offered, saying only that the actor who played the role was magnificent anyway. It has often been speculated that the role Tarantino was referring to was Mr. Orange. Number 15. No promotion was done for Reservoir Dogs in America. When Reservoir Dogs was ready to be released in 1992, they didn't have much money left to spend. This meant there were no funds for promotion. The film was released in the United States without any real marketing push, so it didn't perform well at the American box office. However, in England it was received with great enthusiasm. It became such a huge hit that Quentin Tarantino was mobbed as he walked down the streets of London. The Cannes Film Festival also screened Reservoir Dogs at the Cinema of the Year showcase. They even added something unique to the screening, something they had never done before for any other film. They placed an orange sticker on the tickets that read, "This movie may be too violent for you to watch." This warning made people even more curious, drawing in audiences who wanted to see for themselves. For the European release, the distributor also used individual one-sheet posters for each of the main characters. This distinctive marketing strategy gave the film a strong cult identity and helped it gain more attention overseas. The movie eventually made about $2.9 million at the domestic box office, which was considered a success given its lack of advertising. Tarantino also found another way to make money from the film. He placed long stretches of the movie's dialogue on the official soundtrack CD, knowing that fans would buy it to relive their favorite scenes. This gamble paid off, as the soundtrack sold over 850,000 units in the United States and went platinum in the United Kingdom. Tarantino later said he was proud that the film still appears on many top 10 heist movies lists, even though the heist itself is never actually shown. Reservoir Dogs was also voted the best independent film ever by Empire magazine. It was also voted the most influential movie in the past 15 years by the same magazine. Not long after, Reservoir Dogs confirmed Tarantino's place as a director to watch. His second feature, Pulp Fiction, hit the screen soon after and changed cinema forever. Grossing over $213 million during its box office run, Pulp Fiction was lauded for its non-linear narrative structure, which was strikingly original at the time. Number 16. There were no women in Reservoir Dogs. Another unusual detail many viewers overlook is that there were no women in Reservoir Dogs. Not a single speaking role was given to a female character. This led to criticism from some quarters, but Tarantino explained that the absence of women was a result of the film's premise and setting. The story unfolds almost entirely within a single hour in a warehouse following the robbery. From his perspective, it would be unrealistic for anyone to bring their girlfriend or wife along for a criminal job. He pointed out that the role of a robber has historically been depicted by men in most crime films, citing examples like the early 1990s heist movie Heat. In Reservoir Dogs, the crew consisted entirely of Mr. White, Mr. Orange, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink, Mr. Blue, and Mr. Brown. There was no Mrs. Green, Mrs. Gray, or Mrs. Purple. Some critics suggested this choice might have been influenced by Tarantino's love of classic crime cinema, where the lead protagonists were almost always male. There was, technically, one female listed in the credits as Shocked Woman, but she never appears on screen as a visible character. Tarantino had initially filmed a scene with a female police officer named Jodie McCluskey, played by Nina Simasco. In this scene, McCluskey meets with Mr. Orange to brief him on each of the male crew members he will be working with. However, Tarantino decided to cut it, believing it slowed the pace and took away the mystery of the anonymous characters. The cut wasn't intended as a statement against women, nor as a way to elevate the male cast. Other scenes were also removed for pacing. One of Tarantino's favorite moments during production was a cast dinner at Harvey Keitel's house after 2 weeks of rehearsal. But it was also left on the cutting room floor. He admitted it was a charming sequence, but unnecessary to the story, so they deleted it, like the female police officer scene. Still, it remains a curious fact that in an entire feature film, not a single woman has a speaking part. Number 17. Reservoir Dogs was meant to be a play. Although Reservoir Dogs became a landmark for independent cinema in the early 1990s, it almost skipped the screen entirely. When Tarantino first wrote the script, he had neither a real budget nor a clear path to securing one. At one point, he seriously considered adapting it into a stage play instead of a film. He and a small group of friends who were to make up the cast rehearsed for 2 weeks. A typical Hollywood script rehearsal might run for a few days, but they continued for nearly a month, working through the scenes as if they were building toward a theatrical performance. The confined setting and long stretches of dialogue lent themselves naturally to the stage. Still, Tarantino's heart was set on film. He began planning a $50,000 production, shot in black and white on 16 millimeters. That idea shifted after he spoke with his friend Lawrence Bender. Tarantino told Bender he had written the script in under 4 weeks and believed it could be filmed cheaply. Bender visited his home, watched him pull the script directly from his typewriter, and asked for time to raise a proper budget so it could be made as a feature film rather than a play. Bender passed the script to his acting coach, whose wife gave it to Harvey Keitel. Keitel was impressed enough to join as co-producer. His involvement helped raise the budget to $1.2 million. It was still modest by Hollywood standards, but it was enough for Tarantino to bring his vision to the screen, and sufficient to make Reservoir Dogs one of the defining debut films of its decade. Number 18. Tim Roth was stuck to the floor. In Reservoir Dogs, Tim Roth spends most of the film lying on the warehouse floor, bleeding from a gunshot wound. The blood was a mixture of syrup and food coloring, but throughout filming, it dried and hardened around him. The heat of July and August only sped up the process. After taking a long time, Roth found himself quite literally glued to the concrete. Crew members had to pull him up carefully, peeling away the sticky residue from his clothes and skin. It became a running inconvenience during the shoot. Additionally, during filming, a paramedic was kept on the set to make sure that Mr. Orange's, Tim Roth, amount of blood loss was kept consistent and realistic to that of a real gunshot victim. For Roth, the discomfort was worth it. Reservoir Dogs marked his first significant role in American cinema. Until then, he had worked primarily on British productions under the direction of Mike Leigh and Alan Clark. As the British industry shifted toward period dramas and upper-class settings, the kind of gritty roles he preferred were becoming increasingly scarce. Tarantino, having been impressed by Roth's performance in Vincent and Theo, cast him as Mr. Orange. The part demanded both intensity and vulnerability, and Roth delivered. Even if it meant spending most of the time stuck to the floor, his performance helped define the film and brought him to a much wider audience. Number 19. Many unexpected actors auditioned for Reservoir Dogs but were turned down. When casting began for Reservoir Dogs, a surprising number of well-known actors came forward to audition. Samuel L. Jackson was among them, although he would later go on to feature prominently in several of Tarantino's later films. David Duchovny, known for The X-Files, also read for a part, as did George Clooney and Christopher Walken. All were turned away. Perhaps the most unexpected name, however, was singer and songwriter Tom Waits. Tarantino handed him the Madonna speech to read aloud, curious to hear how his gravelly voice would deliver it. When he finished, Waits told Tarantino the writing was poetic. Although he did not get the role, his appearance at the audition was memorable, if only for the sheer novelty of seeing him there. Number 20. One of the cast in Reservoir Dogs had been a bank robber in real life. Eddie Bunker, who played Mr. Blue, was not simply acting the part of a criminal. Before becoming an author and actor, he had lived much of his life outside the law. His troubles began early. At the age of 5, he ran away from home, already accustomed to stealing. By 17, he was serving a sentence in San Quentin State Prison, making him the youngest inmate there at the time. During his 5 years behind bars, Bunker developed a habit of reading that would eventually lead him to write crime novels. Paroled in 1956 at the age of 22, he found it nearly impossible to fit into ordinary life. Various jobs, including selling used cars, kept him afloat for a time, but he soon returned to criminal activity. He planned robberies, forged checks, and ran other schemes without always taking part directly. After a failed bank robbery ended in a high-speed chase, Bunker was caught again. He feigned mental illness to avoid harsher punishment and was declared insane, only to return to crime later. In the early 1970s, he ran a profitable drug operation in San Francisco until police, tracking his car, followed him to another bank job. Facing what he thought would be 20 years in prison, he instead received a sentence of 5, thanks to influential friends and a lenient judge. By the time he appeared in Reservoir Dogs, Bunker had been out of prison for years and was focusing on writing and acting. However, Eddie Bunker, who plays Mr. Blue in the movie, has called Reservoir Dogs unrealistic. When asked the reason for this statement, he said that the movie premise was weak, and no one would consider going on a robbery with 5 strangers. It was a significant risk because those involved in criminal activities were typically bound by a shared interest that compelled them to work together as a team. He also ridiculed the notion of a gang of distinctly dressed men meeting for breakfast in a public place right before a heist. Many agree with him, as he has a history of being a career criminal, alongside being a crime writer and an actor. Still, there was an odd symmetry in seeing a former bank robber portray one on screen. What do you think of Reservoir Dogs, and which of these 20 weird facts did you find most fascinating? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out the next video popping up on your screen now. You will like it.